Welcome to Magic and Mysticism, the podcast, with Tommy Burnett, New York City's favorite mind reader, where each week he converses with some of the leading mystery performers in the world. Today's guest is Master Magician Meadow Perry. So sit back and relax, while I introduce your host, Mr. Tommy Burnett.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Magic and Mysticism, the podcast. I'm your host, Tommy Burnett, New York City's favorite mind reader. Today we have a very special guest. This young lady has taken her love of magic and combined it with her love of bubbles and created an act that is so enchanting. It is like watching a beautiful dream that you don't want to wake up from. Her name is Meadow Perry, and I am so very excited to have her on the show. I'm going to show you a quick clip before I introduce her. So here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, the beautiful and talented Meadow Perry.
Hi, Tommy. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. How are you today?
I'm wonderful. It's a really beautiful Friday, and it's actually a little bit warmer out. I'm on the East Coast, and it's a little warmer today, so I'm enjoying the weather. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm also on the East Coast, so it's always great when the sky is blue and I don't have to wear a heavy coat. So I agree.
Yes. It's funny with the whole time zone thing. I never know when I talk to magicians and other performers exactly where they are. So I always have to clarify. I'm on the East Coast because a lot of them are on the West Coast. So.
Yeah. Hey, Nick is watching. He says, "Hey, buddies."
Hi, Nick.
So, Meadow, for those who are watching who don't know who you are, could you give us like a brief introduction to who you are and kind of what you do?
Sure. My name's Meadow Perry. I'm on the East Coast, and I'm a magician, actress, and I do bubble artistry. I do bubble sculpting, and through musical theater, I sort of have landed in the magic world, and it's been a really awesome journey. But I got my start in performing as a musical theater actress, and then life kind of happened along the way, and I landed in party entertainment because I can sing, and I have a likeness to a certain princess. So, I'll let it go though. But so I ended up doing party entertainment, but I decided I didn't want to do that. I wanted something that was me. I didn't want to be put in this box, and so I decided to do magic. And as I was starting to explore magic a little bit, I started doing bubbles. A magician friend of mine suggested I started doing a fairy character, and he said a lot of fairies do bubbles, and I was like, that's a good idea. So I ended up auditioning for the Renaissance Fair with my fairy character, and they said, yeah, sure, you can come on out and try this character out and do your bubbles whatever. And it was like a huge hit. And, it really made me say, well, there's something here. So I dived deeper and I said, well, what else can I do? How can I build an act around bubbles? So here I am. And I dropped the fairy character and now I'm just myself. But yeah, it's been a really awesome journey. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. So, which came first, the magic or the bubbles?
Oh, that's a funny question. Well, I would say probably they kind of came at the same time, actually. So I started, finding other ways to entertain. And I started with Molly McBubble. And for those of you who are not magicians out there, that's where you take a bubble and you turn it into a solid ball. And now the version that I started, I didn't know it was called Molly McBubble at the time, or Wonder Bubble. There's a couple different versions. I didn't know that that's what it was called at the time. It was just a thing I came up with. I was doing little tiny bubbles, and I would catch them and I would turn them into glass marbles. And then I would give it to a child as a keepsake. And, year after year, I have these kids come back and say, Meadow, I still have my unpoppable bubble. It's a treasure that I've kept and it's safe. So like, it's a memorable thing. But so I started with magic, but it was a bubble magic effect. so kind of both. And then the bubble world just took me. And now I've started to incorporate other things like cards and mentalism with my bubbles. And if you come to my show, you'll see what might be in that envelope. So it's really fun to sort of be challenged in that way and say, I wonder what I can do with bubbles and this magic effect, or I have this magic thing that I really like. How can I bring it back and tie it back to bubbles, or tie it back to a principle about bubbles? Like I do a rope routine where I talk. It's a very feminist rope routine where I talk about Agnes Pockels, who was a scientist. She was a chemist, but because she was in 1880s, she didn't get recognized for her work in what she did. So that cut away at her, and I do a whole routine, but it brings it back to bubbles. So it's a lot of fun to follow a theme, I think.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
You have any influences?
Do I have any influences? I take a lot of my influences from the musical theater world. Definitely, I'm a big Kristen Chenoweth fan, Sarah Brightman. So they've had impacts on sort of how I perform. And also Linda Eder, which some of you might not know any of these names if you're not a musical theater buff, but they've sort of really inspired how I create things and how I form things. In the magic world, I really look up to Jeff McBride, and I'm a member of the Mystery School, so it's really fun to get to learn from him in Mystery School. And I really like it's funny because I'm this bubbly personality, but I really do like the bizarre side of things. So, so it's fun because I try to keep things light and fun, but I also have this like desire to really want to like scare the pants off of people and surprise them, but it doesn't really fit, to be like, to tell a ghost story and then put it back to bubbles. I really like David Parr's work. He's a really great magician, and there's a lot of magicians out there that I really admire, and there's a lot of women in magic as well. I really love Carissa Hendricks' work, and I'm happy to be collaborating with her now on Bubble U. And some of the classic women in magic, like Luna Shimada and and jade. Just those sort of elegant acts. I really love that style. So
Very cool. Very cool. Um, is there anybody in Magic that you haven't met yet who you would really love to meet?
there's okay. So during the pandemic, it feels like I've met people, even though we haven't met in person. Um, so like Jeff McBride, Luna Shimada. There's other magicians like Jonathan Molo who are on the West Coast, and it's really great. I get to chat with them and converse with them, and it's like I know them, even though we've never met. And I feel like that's happened a lot. So there's a lot of magicians out there that I've become friends with virtually, and like yourself and like Nick and all these magicians that I've been on virtual shows with. We have this camaraderie. So there's a lot of people that I can't wait when the world sort of comes back, and we're doing conventions again. I can't wait to meet everybody. It's gonna be great. Yeah.
Yeah, same here. Yeah. How long have you been doing Magic for?
I've only been doing magic for about 3 years.
Okay.
So not long, but I really, jumped into it. So,
you have.
Yeah, I've taken a lot of my performance background with musical theater, and a lot of those principles adapt and apply to magic performance. So I'm lucky that I have that in my coiffers.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, your career seems to be
Yeah,
skyrocketing right now. So
yeah.
good for you. I'm very happy for you. I
Thank you.
and I'm happy for me to have you on the show.
Yeah.
So it's, do you? So in the last 3 years, um, has there been like a highlight for you so far?
Oh, I would say probably my biggest highlight as of yet is starting a collaboration with Carissa Hendricks on Bubble
Mm-hmm.
U. That's probably been my highlight so far. There's a few things that will potentially be highlights later, but I can't talk about them yet. So, um, yeah.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah.
But so far, that was a real honor for Carissa to recognize my talent with Bubbles, and decide to
Mm-hmm.
bring me on board with her for Bubble U, and that's been great. Building a friendship with her, and from being a performer that I admire to now being a friend that I admire. That's a fun place to be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Clarissa. I haven't met her yet, but I've seen her perform live at Monday Night Magic
Hmm.
uh, in Manhattan, and she is phenomenal.
Yeah,
So,
she has
um,
a really great
yeah,
style, and her improv skills are just off the charts.
yeah,
I love it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
If you get a chance, come on the show.
I will. I will put a good word in. She's very busy
Uh,
these days. So
I
I will
know
tell
she
you
is.
that.
I know she is. I know she is.
Yeah.
Um, I, you know, to be honest, I'm surprised. I've only had one person say they can't do it. Everyone else has been so nice enough to take the time, and so I always appreciate when, like yourself, when people show up on time or even early.
Mhm.
So I really appreciate that. Um,
Absolutely, it's my pleasure.
I know it's only been 3 years, but I know in 3 years you've done a lot. So, um, so far, and if you can't say anything I get it. But so far, where is the coolest place you've performed so far?
Oh, um, well, so there's a difference between the coolest place that I've performed and like I've also enjoyed like just hanging out there, and
Okay.
also like the coolest stage I've been on. So um, the Sparta Renaissance Fair is probably
Okay.
it's so magical. It's in New Jersey,
Mm-hmm.
Sparta, New Jersey, and this place is just magical. If you get a chance to go to the Sparta, New Jersey Renaissance Fair, you should go. It's on an old Boy Scout campground, and
Yeah.
just the way that they have the fair set up. It's a small fair. You can get through the whole thing in one day,
Mm-hmm.
maybe 2 days. But it's a really magical place. I don't prefer working outdoors because bubbles in the wind are unpredictable. So it's not my favorite place to perform, but it's my favorite place to perform and then go hang out. And then also, there's a venue in York, Pennsylvania, that is one of my favorite places to perform so far. It was in an art gallery, and it just it was a last minute shift of venue, because the show that we were putting on, something happened with the original venue, so we had to find something. So we found this art gallery, and it turned out to be the best place for a performance with Crystal Younglove and Christopher Strange, who are both performers, sideshow and magician, a mentalist. And my act was so amazing because it was in this art gallery and there's lights on all the artwork around us.
Mm-hmm.
And the walls were white. So there's all this diffused ambient lighting. So all my bubbles had these gorgeous colors. Um, and it made me go, wow, this is a thing. And I since then have become obsessed with lights and bubbles. And if you come to my show, you can sort of see, and you'll see a little bit today, how I've taken those properties, and I've tried to recreate them in my performance space, to make all these brilliant colors come to life. But that was probably the coolest, unexpected place to perform. It was really, really cool. So
Nice.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, I've been to it. But I've actually performed at that Renaissance Fair years and years ago.
Yeah.
Shortly after they opened, because I used to perform at a Renaissance Fair at the Cloisters Museum.
Hmm.
It was used to be the only one on the East Coast, and then they opened that one, and the Cloisters decided we can't compete with them. So
Right.
yeah, but um, I concur. I highly recommend going to that Renaissance Fair. And I
Hmm.
gotta say, I've only seen bits and pieces of the act, but you've done so much with light and sound, with music, and your theater education has definitely paid off there. And I can't wait to see you live because what you've done on the virtual stage is absolutely amazing. And
Thank you.
I'm not just saying that because you're my guest. If I didn't mean it, I wouldn't say it. So
Thank you. I
um,
appreciate that.
yeah, I grew up in a theater family. My father was an actor, my mother was a dancer, and my
Hmm.
brother is a musician. So I want to say I know as much as you, but I have a respect for it, and
Uh-huh.
you've done your homework. So
Thank you. I appreciate
so unfortunately, as most things in the world, magic has been dominated by men for far too long. And luckily, more and more women like yourself have been rising up everywhere. Um, what has it been like for you as a woman in this field?
Uh, it's been really interesting. You certainly see this in a lot of professions, but I think it's such a prevalent thing in magic because as magicians, we're in a power position on the stage, and so people aren't as used to seeing women in a power position, and certainly we are capable and we can do that. But it's just hasn't been the society norm for so long. And I think magic is a little behind the other art forms in finding that because, you know, just 300 years ago, women were part of the witch hunt, and we did magic. We got burnt at the stake. So that's had a huge impact on women performing with magic. Um, and then also the whole power play thing. But you know, I definitely lean into my femininity as part of my magic. And I think that works to my benefit. So that is something that I get to bring to the table that's a little different. And I've said in the past, like, hey, if you want something that's not some dude with cards, hi, I'm a woman with bubbles. So like, it's a very different brand of magic. And so I'm fortunate in that. But on the flip side, um, there certainly is a little bit of tokenism sometimes, where it's I'm just filling the woman slot in the show, or and I'm very aware of that. Like, and I there is opportunities because of that, but there are times where it makes me go, am I being hired for my talent, or am I being hired because I'm a woman? And I will say to all the men magicians out there, women are aware of when that happens. We are very aware of that. We might not talk about it, we might not say it, but there's definitely those times when you realize you're the woman filling the woman spot. And it feels icky. And then, when there's a women in magic show, it's kind of like, well, here's your sandbox and you get to go play. You can't be with the boys. So that kind of sucks too. So I try to stay away from that a little bit. And I think, especially, the work that Kayla and Carissa have done with Shazam, the Shazam podcast, has had a real impact of bringing awareness of like, hey, don't do that because it's kind of crummy. And more women in magic are saying, no, I don't want to be a part of that. Like, don't put me in a sandbox. Just put me with the other magicians because I'm a magician. And I know there's been, there's some controversy over calling women in magic female magicians. And it's problematic because female is a term you use for a species, right? So female cat, female elephant, so it doesn't fit for female magician. It sort of takes our humanity away because a female human is a woman. So don't call them don't call us female magicians. Just call us women in magic, or simply she is a magician. That is my favorite phrase. When men approach me and they're like, we just want to make sure we're not offensive or unintentionally misogynistic. We want to make sure that we say this correctly. And I say, just say Meadow Perry, she's a magician. It's as easy as that. And, but I love magic as an art form and I love being in it. It is funny. My experience so far has been, when I go to like a magic conference, sometimes it's, whose girlfriend are you? And I'm like, oh, I'm nobody's girlfriend. I'm a magician. where there's a bias there, where you're not given the benefit of the doubt of, oh, you do magic, and it's definitely disheartening. I've also been grabbed by the arm and said, "Hey, baby, where are you going?" Like that kind of stuff. It's an extra mental load that women have to go through. Of am I safe in this space? And especially as magicians, when we travel a lot, we have to make sure that we're safe. All those things. So that's my experience as a woman in magic. I guess it's a lot, but there are pros and cons. So there's good things and there's bad things. But definitely, I think magic is in an upward trend of creating that space for women and seeing women as colleagues and not just the assistant. And that's a really good thing. And I love all the supportive men in magic out there. There's been some wonderful, wonderful allies and some wonderful friends like yourself.
Yeah. I like I told you before the show, I've been trying to get more women on the show, and good for them. They've been mostly busy, but they will be coming on. You are the first woman to be on this show, and I'm ever so grateful. And one of my heroes, one of my first influences was a woman, is still a woman, she's still alive. Her name was Dorothy Dietrich. I don't know if you know who that is.
Yep, she's wonderful.
Yeah, she's a great woman. And she's agreed to be on the show in April. So
Oh, that's amazing. I can't wait to tune in.
I'm really looking forward to seeing her again. I haven't seen her in about 5 years, but she, real quick, she used to own the Magic Townhouse with Dick Brooks on the Upper East Side when I was in high school, and I would go there almost every day after school for like 2 years in a row. Partly because I was kind of sweet on her, but also because she knew everything about magic, and I knew that much, and so it's going to be a really good interview. I also have Alex.
Alex Dilsey, she's amazing.
Yeah.
I just have to brag on her because she actually lives nearby me. We haven't met in person yet, but we've become friends during the pandemic, and her sleight of hand skills blow me away. She's amazing. So, yeah.
Well, you have recommended a few people, and she was one of them.
Yeah.
And her response was, "Really, you want me?" And I was like, "Dude, I just saw your a couple of videos online. Of course, I want you. Your manipulation skills are off the roof. So yeah, I don't have the list in front of me, but I have some really cool guests coming up that are women.
Thank you.
I've always hated when people call women females. I've never liked that.
It's so commonplace, so it's not something we think about, right? But our language matters, and I get a little heated about it sometimes. But just you recognizing and taking a step to change your language, that means a lot. That means so much.
Well, I'm glad. I was born with cerebral palsy, and I was always treated differently. So I I feel like I have um, a deeper understanding of what it's like to be treated differently. I'm not saying I know what it's like to be a woman because that would be
Like,
ludicrous for me to
yeah.
say. Um, but I do understand what it's like. So I've always tried to be a supporter of um, people who are not treated fairly. So
Hmm.
um, on a lighter note, um, you as a woman, you are working a lot and getting notoriety, and um, I think it's great, and I only see great things in your future. So um, don't forget me.
I could never forget you, Tommy. Oh my gosh, you're a wonderful role model and such a champion. You know, for what you're doing, bringing people on and talking about real issues. I admire that and I love that so much. And giving other magicians a platform, it's fantastic. You're great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, so I know you've been doing a lot of virtual shows.
Mhm.
We all have. We haven't really had that much of a choice because of COVID and quarantine. What was the transition like for you going from live shows to virtual, and how's that been going for you in the last year?
Uh, it was rough at the start. The quality of the video you see now is been a big journey. Um, I first started with just my phone, with like a grainy picture, and it wasn't that great. But I was doing Facebook Lives, and I wasn't charging at first. I was just
Mhm.
trying to kind of lift people's spirits and do a little stuff on Facebook Live just to cheer people up. And then, people started doing Zoom shows and people started asking me. And so I got a nicer webcam. And then, along the way, I'm like, wow, this webcam isn't that great compared to some other people's pictures. And, the colors and the bubbles don't really show up. So it's
Mhm.
evolved into that. It's evolved into other monitors, and like it's a whole thing. This used to be my dining room. I no longer have a dining room, so but I have the bubble studio, and that's how I've been sort of surviving during the pandemic,
Mhm.
financially and morally, because
Mhm.
it's really kept my morale up. Um, but it also has given me a chance to really dive into my show and work out the scripting things, and get rid of some of those old stock lines, and really make it a meaningful show. So that's been, you know, phenomenal. But I also am very lucky that my art form with bubbles is very visual. Um,
Mhm.
because not only am I capturing, um, international guests for my show, they can come and see my show and enjoy it, um,
Yeah.
even though they don't understand everything I'm saying.
Mhm.
And I also had a person who was deaf at my last show, and he said, I really enjoyed your show because it's so visual, and I didn't have to know what you were saying to understand what was going on. And I think that's
Mhm.
really great. Um, and then also, because my show is so visual, um, I've been able to continue performing in person a little bit. We've done car parades, and I make the giant bubbles outdoors. And I'll do a little magic trick here and there, and I'm distanced from people, but they can still see what's going on. And I've been wearing a mask and having a little mic pack that amplifies my voice. Um, and that's been really great. And I've done a few birthday parties that way where I put up stanchions and they just have, their immediate family. So they're not having a big gathering. And I have really strict rules on like, if I'm going to come perform for a birthday party, like what I need and the numbers and I've even been able to do a hybrid, performance in person and then virtual, and that's been really great. So it's been a good journey because of all this networking that I've gotten to do with magicians, and I get to go on these variety shows. And it's exposure bucks, yeah, but I think if you know where to put your exposure bucks, um, it's a good thing. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so I've really enjoyed the pandemic, and it's opened opportunities for me that wouldn't have happened had we not had the pandemic. Um, you know, uh, Getting to be on your show, that's I probably would be too busy working my day job and working on the weekends to be able to come be on a show or you know,
Yeah.
so I'm fortunate that I've been able to adapt. Yeah.
You also have a kid, right?
I have two kids. I have two boys, 5 and 7.
Yeah.
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 Yep.
So I mean that alone is a lot of work. So
Yeah. They keep me
I
on my
mean
toes for sure.
that they do. I think they do.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I mean, yeah. I don't think um, anyone who doesn't have kids. I mean, I don't have kids. But I don't think I don't think people who don't have kids don't realize how much work that is on its
Yeah.
own. And so you have that, and then you have your day job, and then you have
Mhm.
your magic job. Um, so you're oh look, it's Alex. Alex, uh,
Oh, there
yeah,
she is. Hi, Alex.
Alex. Your adaptation culture has been nothing short of inspirational. Rock
Thank you.
star.
Thank you.
Well put, Alex. We'll be seeing you in a couple of weeks.
I know. I can't
Um,
wait. I can't wait for
yeah,
that.
I can't either. I can't either. Um, by the way, anybody who's watching, if you make a comment, please put your name in the StreamYard. Uh, there's a link to go to StreamYard. Otherwise,
Oh, right. You
otherwise,
have to give consent
yeah,
to put your name.
yeah,
Yeah.
because some people have made a comment, but I don't know who you are. So um, anyway, um, yeah. So let's get who that is. Okay. Now I know for myself with COVID, it's been the same as what you described. As far as like opportunities that would not have normally been there. Um, and most of them have been what you call, how do you put it? Uh,
Oh,
so,
exposures.
yeah. Exclusive, but I like that. Um, but not all. But because of that, I've met people like yourself, and uh, I've got to perform with my mentor, Kenton,
Mhm.
and Ed, and got to meet Jonas and Jonathan Molo,
Uh-huh.
um, and everybody else that we perform with. In fact, a week from today, Meadow and myself and some other people are performing at a benefit called Buddy Aid. Yay! Um, and there's yours on the bottom right hand corner, and you can Yeah.
It's backwards. You're right to your left, and your left is your right.
um, so that is next week, a week from today. Um, I will be there, but I will be late because I have my own show the same day at 7:30. So as soon as my show is over, I'll pop on to 38 and probably do the same thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, um,
Yeah.
and I have some more announcements for the end of the show. But back to Meadow Perry, um, a very interesting woman, and we're talking about magic and being a woman in magic and um, working hard. And what is it like? Um, um, I mean, okay, so you say you like performing virtually. I actually like it. I like it almost better than live, but I do miss
Yeah.
doing live because there's some things I can't do virtually. Some of my pet effects they don't work on Zoom or any virtual. Is there anything that you do live that you can't do virtually?
Uh, no, but there is the other way around. I do
Mm-hmm.
have, and you saw it at the last Buddy Aid, and I might do it next week. But there's an effect that I do using the bubble wall and light
Mm-hmm.
refraction
Right.
that I can't do in person. I might be able. I'm working on it. I'm working on figuring out for in person, but it has to do very much with angles and
Right.
lights,
Right.
and I get to cheat in the virtual format
Mm-hmm.
because I get to have um, things next to the camera. To be able to, and obviously if I'm performing for an audience, that's going to block their view. So
Mm-hmm.
that is a effect that I had this idea for, and I finally was like, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this thing, and it's like my little surprise in my show. And I especially love when magicians come to my show and they see that, and their jaw hits the floor, and it's a big like yes moment for me because it's unique. Nobody else does it. It's my effect, and to be able to say I came up with a magic effect, it feels good to be
Yeah. Yeah.
a creator. And
Yeah.
it's really exciting. So there's nothing that I perform live that I can't do virtually, but there's virtual things that I can't do live yet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna figure
Mm-hmm.
this out.
I may have a few ideas for you because I actually like that effect very
Right?
much.
Isn't it
Yeah.
gorgeous?
Yeah. And I think it is possible to do it on stage.
Yeah.
I might have a few ideas for
We'll
you.
we'll talk.
Yeah. Because that is one thing I do is do a lot of creating. Um, so that's it, that's good. And all the stuff you do is phenomenal. In fact, wait a minute. This is your website, meadowperry.com. You can get tickets. Yeah, there you go. There you go. You can get tickets to Meadow's upcoming shows on meadowperry.com. And definitely come and watch Buddy 8 this week on Facebook Live. It's a good cause. It's for the Elton John AIDS Society. Yeah.
Uh, is it a society or foundation? I'm not sure.
Probably, Public foundation. Public
Yeah.
foundation. I, the word society has been stuck in my mind all day today, and
Yeah.
I don't really know why, but um, now I know for me, you are a student of Jeff and Bright. I'm a student of Kenton Effort, and I
Mhm.
know that they have similar um, points of view. Um, and they have some where they disagree as well. But
Yeah.
what is one way that you can make a stronger, deeper connection with your spectator or audience?
Uh, I believe that if you have authenticity, that really has a connection with your audience. When I first started building my script, I wanted to talk about fairy tales and myths and legends, and um, Daniel Greenwolf, who is my partner, and he also is sort of a mentor to me in magic.
Mhm.
He's really dived in and helped me with my scripting, and he's really pushed me to be me, which used to be very uncomfortable for me. I used to be Meadowlark the fairy. That used to be my character.
Mhm.
And I used to talk
Mhm.
about fairy tales and all these things. But it wasn't authentic, and it was a caricature, and she was kind of over the top, and it wasn't me, and I felt like it was missing the mark as connecting with my spectators. But now, especially with my virtual show, I talk about my experience in magic. I talk about feminist stuff. I talk about just how my journey has gone in magic, and the joy that I find in bubbles, and why I find bubbles fascinating, and I share those things, and I think that really comes across to the audience, and it gives you a connection because you're sharing a real experience. You're not making up a story. It's a real experience, and I think people connect with that, and um, go, oh yeah, this is her real story, um, and I think people really appreciate authenticity. Yeah.
Absolutely. Um, um, there's another word that has been popping up in my life a lot lately. Authenticity. Um, um, and I find that you're right. It is about being yourself. Um,
Mhm.
that is something that it's hard. I think it's hard for all of us, but I know it's not really hard for me. Um, and um, probably in the last decade, it's been getting better for me, easier for me to just be
Mhm.
myself and
Yeah.
say, hey, this is me. You either like me or you're not, and there's nothing I can do about that. And luckily, most people like me.
Yeah.
There are a few who don't, and that's okay.
Right.
Um, but I think it's important, though, to recognize the fact that making a connection with your audience goes beyond just being genuine, um, or I should say, um, beyond being myself. It goes into being genuinely interested in the other person that I'm
Yeah.
performing for. You know,
Absolutely.
um, because um, then there is that connection, and having
Mhm.
that connection, I can bring the audience wherever I want to. You know,
Yeah.
um, it, it it just makes me that much more of a stronger performer than I was when I wasn't doing that. So That's one of my standalone questions I ask everyone because it's very important to me.
Mhm.
Um, I think I heard Peter Turner say it once years ago. If if uh, if I have 5 minutes to perform something for you, and I have a choice to either do magic or make a connection, I will
Uh-huh.
make the connection um, because I think it has more value. I would prefer to do both, but I think it has
Mhm.
more value to make that connection. And people tend to remember you better too. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah,
Not
people won't remember things that you did. They'll remember how you made them feel. I try to remember
exactly,
that.
exactly. Yeah,
You can do cups and balls phenomenally, but if you didn't connect with the audience, it's just cups and balls.
there you go. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's exactly right. Um, let's see. I think actually you mentioned a very interesting question that isn't part of my question, but I want to talk a little bit more about the
Sure.
bubble, the bubble situation. Um, what is it that fascinates you about bubbles?
So bubbles, they're like a liquid painting, and they're temporary. So it's like you create it, and it's a moment in time, and then it's gone, and then you can create another one. But it just seeing them dance and sparkle and all the colors swirl. When you really see a bubble up close, you see these swirling colors, and I mean, it's amazing. If you've ever seen Tom Noddy perform, he sort of
Yeah.
originated the genre of bubble magic. And, I
Mhm,
stand on his shoulders. And he,
mhm,
he used to say, or he says that, like, in the 70s, when he just was playing with bubbles and, he was bored, he had nothing to do. and he would just, whoa, like, he's a hippie guy. and,
yeah, yeah,
he would just watch the colors. And I think I'm naturally high sometimes, and
mhm, mhm,
I really enjoy the bubbles and the beauty of them, and it's a real appreciation for them. And I absolutely love when I do bubble wall and you see all those colors, and
mhm,
so it's magical, but it's also scientific, and and I don't know why. It's a weird thing that we expect bubbles to be just these round little things that kids play with, but they can do so many things, and it's totally unexpected, and that's the thing that I love, is doing something unexpected and making an audience member go, "Wow, I didn't know bubbles could do that."
mhm,
you know,
mhm,
and I'm funny, and that I often forget. How not commonplace some of the things that I do with bubbles are, like to the point, um, where I'll be putting together an act, and I'll say I'm not going to do that because that's the easy stuff, and I have to be reminded, no, that's still amazing because people don't see that every day, you
yeah,
know. And I'll show you some of the stuff later, but I sometimes I have to get out of my own way and show people the things that are even
yeah,
the simple things because they're awesome and amazing. So
yeah, and I, you make it awesome because I have seen a lot of bubble ads. It was one off Broadway for a while.
mhm.
It was
The
good.
Disney show, yeah.
Yeah, it was good, but I listened nothing against them because it's a good show. But I did leave feeling like, all right. he did stuff with bubbles, and
Yeah.
and it's cool. But seeing the stuff that in fact, the other day there was somebody on Facebook who they made the one bubble
Mm.
really big, and then they blew into it and made
Yeah.
bubbles on the inside, and I was like, all right, but I see Meadow Perry to it, and it's like, oh my god, it was so cool.
Well,
you
it's
know?
also, yeah, I also think it's because of my theater background, I put a lot of expression in my face and in my
Mm-hmm.
body. So even though I'm not saying anything, I'm telling you kind of like, hey, this is a really cool thing. So I'm kind of
Right.
showing you how you should respond in a way, in a weird way. And
Yeah.
kind of, so even though I'm not talking, I'm building that connection with you and that authenticity, in that
Mm-hmm.
moment of like, yeah, this is really cool, right? And like,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and I get like, I use my femininity. I get like a little flirty with it, and
Yeah.
and it's this awkward girl next door vibe, whereas I feel like a lot of other bubble artists, um, they're they put the emphasis on the bubbles of like, this is a cool thing. I did a trick. Let me do another trick. Let me do another trick, instead of letting it sit and putting the emotion in it. And
Right.
I think all that's super important, and
Yeah.
that's what I've tried to build towards, and I hope I'm accomplishing it. And so yeah,
I think it was, but
thanks.
not, not that anyone cares what I think, but
I care
I
what you
think.
think.
Uh, um, that's what I wanted to hear. um, so, is there anything we haven't covered that you'd like to talk about before we move on to my favorite part of the show?
I guess I would like to give people a little piece, tidbit of, if you find a thing that's weird, just do it. You don't have to explain to people. Like, I definitely, doing this bubble thing and having this level um, of involvement with bubbles is a little weird. But it has these fantastic results, and there's magicians, that everybody finds a little niche, and sometimes you find a weird thing, go with it. That weird thing can be what differentiates yourself from the other acts. So find the thing that makes you weird and go with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I realized I skipped a pretty important question, and that was kind of an answer to it. What one thing would you recommend for somebody entering a career in magic and or mysticism?
Yeah, so that thing, yes. So the finding something that makes you different, even if it's weird, and going with it, that's really good advice. But also, um, just jump in. If you find a thing, just do it. Just jump in. With bubbles, I found that I have this sort of instinctual, um, ability with bubbles, and it's become even more evident as I've started teaching. I have a Patreon, where I'm teaching, bubbles, the inside the bubble studio,
Mhm.
classes, and I'm on Bubble U with Carissa as an instructor. So it's become very apparent to me how much came instinctually with bubbles, and it's really about just immersing yourself in whatever you're doing and getting used to it. I've talked to Tom Noddy at length about things, and he used to say, that he would have chats with Finn John, who is kind of a master at thread work, and Finn John would tell Tom Noddy, "You're like with bubbles, like what I am with threads. You know when they're going to break. You know how far you can stretch them. And, Finn John used to just play with the thread, and he would know how far he could stretch the thread before it would break.
Exactly.
So, like, learning those boundaries of things, and how far you can push them, and what the limits are, then you can push things to that limit and do it with confidence. So, yeah, just jumping in and immersing yourself in a thing, I think, is really important with magic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If anybody hasn't seen Finn John, you can check out videos of Finn John. Amazing stuff. Same thing with Sandra, with Bubbles,
Mm-hmm.
or and Sweatworks. But the uh, now I'm blanking out on his name again. Is it John Nutty?
Tom Noddy.
Tom Nutty. So,
Mm-hmm.
you can see videos of him on YouTube, and
Mm-hmm.
that's where I first saw him, was on
Uh-huh.
YouTube, and he's absolutely amazing. And I do see a lot of his influence in your work. Um,
Yes.
but you've taken it to a whole new level, and I think that's the important thing with um, when you are influenced by someone. It's
Mm-hmm.
nothing wrong with um, taking an influence, but then once it, once it becomes a part of you, then you can take it and make it your own. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. So and you're doing that, and I see you continue to do that on a daily basis, and um, I, I keep giving you compliments, but it's because you deserve them. Um,
Thank you.
you do the the community of magic and mentalism proud, and I for one am very happy to know you. So, um, having said that, would you please perform a little bit for us right
Of
now?
course I would. I would be so honored to perform a little bit for you. Um,
Okay.
yeah, so I'm going to show you a few things first. I usually do these things to music, but I thought since this is more casual and I can sort of have this connection with you, that I would just kind of show you the things that I like to do. So I'm going to bring this little table in. Now, I talked a little bit about Tom Noddy and sort of the work that he's done. Um, he really did pioneer a lot of what we know of bubble artistry and bubble sculpting. And a lot of magicians start with playing cards. And I didn't. I started with bubble sculpting, really. So some of these things, when you play with bubbles and you start learning how to stretch their limits and push them, you manipulate them and you learn how you can animate them in different ways. And some of the ways are really, really amazing. So this one is my absolute favorite to do. And it's called the bubble carousel. And you'll see why in a moment. I can get up real close here so you can see it. Now, this used to be the hardest trick that I did. I used to be super intimidated until I practiced and I practiced. and really learned how much I could push these bubbles. So there you are. That's one of my favorites. Now, when you really start to learn how to push the boundaries of bubbles, you can change their shapes. They're very geometric. Because they're a sphere shape, they're a minima, and they want the least amount of surface area, so they become a sphere. But if you push them on all 6 sides, you can create another shape. You can force them into a box. Wants to be finicky. Oop, and it popped. So bubbles are very finicky co-stars. They are sometimes worse than children and animals to perform with. But that's the beauty. If it pops, we just make another one. It's a lesson in impermanence. She wants to be a very fickle co-star today. Well, you sort of got to see it for a moment, that we pushed it on all 6 sides and we made a cube. But so when most people think of bubbles in a very specific shape, they think of a sphere. But when you work with bubbles for as long as I do, you begin to see them in a completely different dimension. Once again, my name is Meadow Perry. I'm going to show you one more thing. The last thing you think of when you think of bubbles is danger. So let's go there. Thank you so much.
That was excellent.
Thank you.
That was excellent. What I love about bubble acts in particular is when they pop, it doesn't matter. You just do it again.
Yeah, they're a little finicky today.
Well, you know,
But yeah, that's where developing a bubble act, I decided to add so much magic to it because, I have things in the quavers. If things aren't working, I can rely more on the magic than the bubbles. So, yeah.
Thank you, Ella. Ella Smith is a very dear friend and supporter of myself and a lot of local musicians. So, and Alex says, brava.
Thank you.
No, that was phenomenal. And it really accentuates a very important aspect of magic is when something goes wrong, you don't freak out. You just
Yeah.
and
I learned a big lesson really early on with my bubble act. I performed at the East Coast Spirit Sessions, and that's all the way down in Myrtle Beach. So it was a little bit of a journey for me, and I had my partner Daniel Greenwolf. He went down ahead of time because he was helping out with sound and things. So he took my props and my set with him, and he took my bubbles with him. And unfortunately, I didn't realize how important the temperature was for the bubbles at that time. Like, I knew that them being cold was a bad idea, but I didn't think that like 60 degrees would bother them that much. So unfortunately, they were at 60 degrees for a long time ahead of the performance. So I went to perform, and the bubble wall wouldn't work at all. And I had a 6-minute piece to do. And it was, I'll never forget, like, it was to a version of Sandman. And like, so that song is ruined for me because it was such a terrible experience.
No.
Not only did it teach me to be prepared with other things in case it goes wrong, but also how to build the suspense with the audience. Because it got to a point, and you could see the frustration on my face. You could tell that I was ready to cry on stage, but it was a room of magicians and friends, and everyone wanted me to succeed on stage. So it built up this suspense, and it's sort of like a juggler, right? You don't want the juggler to drop the thing. So if the juggler is dropping the thing, you're like, oh, come on, buddy, you can do it. So, the whole audience was rooting for me. And then finally at the end, something worked, and the audience went crazy. So it taught me 2 very important lessons that day. And, that's, 3 lessons really, because it also taught me that failure can be a learning experience, and that we can learn from our failures. So just like when Penn and Teller, when they're like, well, now we know that can go wrong, it builds your experience and makes you better. So, now in the moment I was distraught and I was upset. But now I can look at it and think that I'm glad that happened, because it makes you grow as a performer. So absolutely, all those things.
Yeah. Any seasoned performer have gone through that to some degree or another, and if they say that hasn't happened, they're frankly they're not being honest. It happened to the best of us. Do you have any parting words for our viewers today?
I guess my parting word would be, like, we're coming out of the pandemic. If you're not a magician, and you're looking to entertain your friends, hire a magician because they need it. A lot of us have adapted to the virtual thing, but the performing arts as a whole is hurting real bad. So get some takeout and watch a virtual show. And then when things do come back in person, hire your magicians and hire your jugglers and hire all those people, have a party. I can't wait to see people again. But I hope everyone stays safe and stays well, and you're all amazing. Keep being amazing.
Thank you, Meadow. If you can hang out for a minute or two so we can talk after the show, and we'll put you backstage. Thank you again for coming out and being my guest today. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Meadow Perry. So that has been today's episode of Magic and Mysticism. I do have a few announcements. I will try and make them as fast and painless as possible, because I do have a few. The first 2 are I'm very excited about. Next week on Magic and Mysticism is my friend and colleague, Mr. Bauer Western, who is not only a gifted mentalist, but he is also a gifted tarot card reader. And so we will be talking about probably mostly tarot, but certainly mentalism as well. And that is a week from today at 3 p.m. as usual. But you may have noticed that I made an announcement yesterday on Facebook that I have a surprise. And the surprise is next week we're having 2 episodes of Magic and Mysticism. The second one will be a week from tomorrow, Saturday at 4 p.m. We have the Steve the Amazing, aka Steve Lochner, who is a tremendous musician, mentalist, and author of many mentalism books out on the market today. And we will be talking with him and having some fun on Saturday at 4 p.m. So please tune in for that. We also tomorrow is a free magic show called Omar Illusion's Virtual Interactive Magic Theater from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. on Facebook and Zoom. If you go to omarillusion.nyc, you can watch it either way on Facebook or on Zoom. If you go on Zoom, you can participate as like a volunteer. If you watch it on Facebook, you can only watch. Another reminder for next Friday, actually 2 reminders for next Friday. Buddy 8 is a running fundraiser that myself and Meadow have been a part of now for Well, I didn't mean for the video to go on, but that is the show is happening the same night as Buddy 8. I will be on Buddy 8 after my show. Buddy 8 is free, mine is not. And my last announcement is if you are a musician or a mentalist, please stop by my website called Magic Taboo. I have my own creations on that website, including my Mark, I forgot the name of it, my Mark Twain book test, among other things. So please check that out. And that is enough for me. I hope you enjoyed today's episode with Meadow Perry. My name is Tommy Burnett, and remember, the magic is inside of you. It is not your props. It is inside you. So share your magic with others, and I will see you again next time on Magic and Mysticism, the podcast.